It is very hard for archaeologists to explain how that was done using purely leverage and mechanical advantage.
Granite is one of the hardest stones on Earth. It is stronger than steel in many ways. Even today, cutting it cleanly takes advanced machines and diamond-tipped tools. Yet more than 4,000 years ago, ancient workers in Egypt carved massive granite blocks with smooth edges and sharp corners. Some cuts are so precise they look modern. The question is simple. How did they really do it? The story begins at Aswan. In southern Egypt, near the banks of the Nile, lies an ancient granite quarry. The stone here is dense and unforgiving. Pink and red granite stretches across the land like frozen fire. In this place, the ancient Egyptians cut enormous blocks weighing up to 70 tons. Some were shipped north to build temples and chambers inside the Great Pyramid complex. Granite is not like limestone. Limestone is soft. You can cut it with copper tools. Granite is different. Contains quartz crystals. Quartz ranks high on the hardness scale. Copper is soft. Much softer than quartz. When copper touches granite, it should wear down quickly. And yet, inside the Great Pyramid, there are granite beams weighing over 50 tons placed more than 200 feet above ground. In the king's chamber, the granite blocks fit tightly together. Some surfaces are flat to a level that rivals modern construction. Mainstream history tells us that workers used copper saws and tubular drills with sand as an abrasive. The sand, not the copper, did the cutting. This explanation has been repeated in textbooks for decades. It sounds reasonable at first, but when engineers studied the drill holes more closely, something strange appeared. In some granite cores discovered by archaeologists, spiral marks were visible. These spirals suggest that the drill moved through the granite at a steady and rapid rate. When modern engineers measured the feed rate implied by those spirals, the numbers did not match what copper and sand should be capable of achieving. It did not mean aliens. It did not mean magic. It meant something was missing. There are granite boxes inside the Serapeum at Saqqara. These boxes weigh up to 100 tons each. Their surfaces are polished. The inside corners are tight. The lids fit so precisely that a thin blade can barely slide between them. Even today, creating such precision on that scale would require advanced measuring tools. So what exactly were the ancient Egyptians using? We know they had copper. We know they had stone tools. We know they had manpower. But manpower alone does not create precision. Strength can move blocks. It does not create straight internal drill lines in hard crystalline rock. Some researchers argue that we underestimate ancient skill. Others argue that our understanding of their tools is incomplete. There may have been harder materials involved. Dolerite pounding stones have been found in quarries. These stones are harder than granite. Workers could pound the surface repeatedly to shape it. But pounding does not explain smooth cylindrical drill holes. And that is where the mystery deepens. Because if the tools were more advanced than we think, then our timeline of technological progress may not be as simple as we were taught. For now, one thing is clear. Granite does not lie. The cuts are real. The drill marks are real. The precision is measurable. And the explanation remains uncertain. The deeper researchers looked, the stranger the details became. Inside the Great Pyramid complex and at sites like Saqqara, drill cores were found in the late 1800s. One of the men who studied them closely was Sir Flinders Petrie. He was not a conspiracy theorist. He was a careful surveyor. He measured everything. When Petrie examined the granite cores, he noticed deep spiral grooves. These grooves wrapped around the core like threads on a screw. That meant the drill had moved down into the stone while spinning at a steady rate. But here is the problem. When modern engineers tried to copy this using copper tubes and sand, they could not match the same feed rate. The ancient drill seemed to cut faster and more smoothly than expected. If the tool was copper, the copper should have worn away quickly. If sand was the cutting agent, the process should have been slow and uneven. Yet the grooves suggest force and consistency. This does not prove advanced machines. It does not prove lost super technology. But it does show that something about the tool system was more efficient than we assume. At the Serapeum of Saqqara, massive granite boxes sit underground in dark tunnels. Each one weighs around 70 to 100 tons. The interior walls are straight. The surfaces are flat. Some researchers who measured them claimed the precision is within a fraction of a millimeter. That level of flatness is not easy even today. To shape granite that smoothly, modern workshops use hardened steel, diamond abrasives, and precision measurement devices. Ancient Egypt had none of these, at least not officially. So what could explain it? Some scientists argue that patience and labor can achieve amazing results. With enough time, sand abrasion can smooth almost any surface. Thousands of workers over decades could produce remarkable precision. Others are not convinced. They point to symmetry. They point to uniform drill holes. They point to internal corners that are sharply cut instead of rounded. They ask a quiet but serious question. Were the tools more advanced than we have found? Maybe the answer is not lost technology. Maybe it is lost context. Copper tools have been discovered. Dolerite pounding stones have been discovered. But metal corrodes. Wood decays. If harder alloys were used in limited ways, physical proof might not survive thousands of years. This is where debate grows tense. Because if the ancient Egyptians had access to a stronger cutting method, even in small amounts, it changes how we view early engineering. It suggests a deeper understanding of material science than we give them credit for. Still, no clear evidence of advanced machinery has ever been uncovered. The mystery lives in the measurements, in the stone itself. And if this story is opening your eyes, consider subscribing. Because what comes next shifts the focus from tools to knowledge.v. If the tools were not impossible, then maybe the real question is not about metal at all. Maybe it is about knowledge. For a long time, ancient Egypt has been viewed as powerful but simple. Massive labor, simple tools, slow progress. But that view has changed. Modern archaeology shows that Egyptian engineers understood geometry, weight balance, and large-scale planning at a high level. The Great Pyramid was aligned almost perfectly with true north. That level of accuracy requires careful sky observation. It requires planning. It requires systems. So when we look at granite cuts that seem too precise, we must ask something deeper. Are we misunderstanding how advanced their methods truly were? In experimental workshops, some researchers have tried to recreate ancient techniques. They used copper saws. They used quartz sand. They used patience. Slowly, block by block, they shaped granite. It worked, but it was slow, very slow. And that is where time becomes important. The Great Pyramid was built in about 20 years. That includes quarrying, transporting, shaping, and placing millions of stones. Limestone makes up most of the structure. Granite was used only in key internal areas. But even that limited use required enormous effort. Could thousands of workers rotating shifts over years create the precision we see? Possibly. But then there are the granite boxes at Saqqara. Their inner surfaces are smooth and flat on all 6 sides. The corners are tight. The lids are massive and balanced. Precision like that is not just about force. It is about measurement. To create flat surfaces that match, you need a reference plane. You need tools that check straightness. You need consistency across the entire surface. Some researchers argue that simple straight edges, combined with patient sanding and polishing, could achieve this over time. If one surface is polished flat enough, it becomes a reference for the next. Others argue that this process would take far longer than the timeline allows. This is where emotions can rise. But we must stay calm. There is no clear proof of lost supermachines. There is also no full explanation that satisfies every measurement. What we see may not be lost technology. It may be lost understanding of process. Ancient workers may have used clever systems that we have not fully reconstructed. For example, water mixed with sand can increase abrasion power. Weighted drills can apply steady pressure. Repetition over years can create smooth surfaces that look modern. The difference between primitive and advanced is often perspective. The ancient Egyptians were not primitive thinkers. They were careful planners. They built structures that still stand after 4,500 years. Their stonework was not random. It was intentional. But if their knowledge was deeper than we assume, Why do we find so little written about these construction methods? Egypt left behind detailed records about taxes and crops. Yet we find almost nothing explaining how granite chambers were cut with such control. That silence raises a quiet tension. If this story is making you question what you thought you knew, stay with it, because the next layer moves beyond Egypt and into the politics of history itself. For decades, mainstream researchers avoided testing granite like this under real-world conditions. The assumption was simple: sand, copper, labor. End of story. But the stones themselves tell a different tale. In the 20th century, engineers tried experiments using only copper tubes and quartz sand. They discovered something unsettling. Even with perfect technique, cuts were slower, rougher, and far less precise than the ones in the pyramids. Some drill holes cracked the stone. Others produced uneven spirals. The ancient grooves, however, were uniform and deep. They told a story of controlled, sustained pressure, unlike anything replicated easily in modern labs. The question grew: did we underestimate ancient material science? Could the Egyptians have discovered methods of friction reduction, vibration control, or heat management that are now lost? There are traces of experimentation in surviving tools. Tubular drills, for instance, could have been paired with special abrasives. But no one knows for sure. Even more striking are the subtle marks left on the granite surfaces themselves. Minute scratches suggest repeated motion, almost like guided movement along a template. Some cores show twisting patterns that imply rotational mechanics far more sophisticated than pure manual labor. Modern engineers cannot reproduce this without motors, calibration tools, and precise measurement. And yet, there is no record of advanced machinery in Egyptian texts. That absence has always puzzled historians. For a civilization so meticulous in writing down rituals, taxes, and monuments, why would engineering secrets vanish? Some argue it may have been a guarded craft, passed down orally through select artisans. Others wonder if time simply erased the evidence. One team in the 1970s tried to push the experiment further. They used harder stones to pound granite. They tried combinations of copper, sand, and pressure rigs. They could eventually mimic some effects, but never the perfection. Each attempt highlighted how much subtle knowledge might have been lost. The mystery of the stone is also a mystery of science itself. Granite does not bend. It does not lie. Its smooth surfaces, sharp corners, and deep spirals are the record of an intelligence that operated under rules we can barely imagine. And that intelligence was bound by reality. Nothing magical, nothing impossible. Yet the methods challenge our assumptions about early engineering. If you're following this story, consider subscribing, because what comes next takes us out of the quarries and into the hidden systems of global power, where stonework meets influence and science intersects with control. The granite mystery does more than puzzle engineers. It forces us to rethink what early humans were capable of. Precision, planning, and understanding of materials may have been far deeper than textbooks admit. When you combine the scale of the pyramids, the exacting cuts of granite, and the silent knowledge lost to time, a new picture emerges. History often emphasizes kings, battles, and political change. Yet technology, real, practical knowledge, shapes civilizations quietly behind the scenes. The ability to cut and move enormous stones without modern machinery allowed Egypt to dominate architecture, religion, and trade for centuries. That knowledge became power. It influenced culture, politics, and even belief systems. Some scholars argue that our modern timeline of technological development is too linear. We assume progress moved steadily from simple tools to complex machines. But the granite evidence suggests pockets of advanced understanding existed long before expected. Knowledge may have risen, flourished, and partially vanished, leaving only stone as proof. Consider this. The engineering precision in ancient Egypt was so advanced that when explorers and engineers in the 19th century attempted restoration or copying, they struggled. The gaps in understanding were not about imagination, they were about missing methods. The past held techniques we cannot fully recreate today. Even beyond Egypt, similar mysteries exist worldwide. From the megaliths of Stonehenge to the terraces of Machu Picchu, Precise stone cutting, transportation, and placement appear repeatedly. Each site reflects careful observation, experimentation, and a mastery of materials. Yet, in many cases, the exact techniques remain unknown. What does this mean for human history? It suggests that intelligence, creativity, and practical science were far more advanced in the ancient world than our linear histories admit. The narrative of slow, steady human improvement might overlook the ingenuity that once existed and could exist again. These stones, drilled, polished, and transported with extraordinary skill, are more than monuments. They are records of understanding, problem-solving, and mastery over the natural world. They challenge assumptions not with wild claims, but with undeniable evidence carved into stone. If this exploration is reshaping what you thought you knew, stay curious. The next step is not just about history. It's about uncovering the systems, knowledge, and methods that shape civilizations and may still influence the modern world. As we dive deeper, the focus shifts from tools to techniques. The granite itself holds the clues. Marks, grooves, and polished surfaces suggest the use of hidden mechanics, methods that go beyond simple hammering and abrasion. Some researchers believe that water, combined with sand and controlled rotation, could act almost like a primitive lathe. But experiments show this alone cannot explain the precision of the deepest drill cores. Inside the quarries of Aswan, dolerite pounders were discovered. They are harder than granite and could chip away surfaces slowly. Yet they leave an irregular texture. The uniformity inside the king's chamber and the serapeum is unlike anything that could be achieved by pounding alone. There are lines that indicate repeated, consistent motion, almost as if guided by unseen templates or jigs. Some evidence points to an early understanding of vibration. By combining a spinning motion with incremental pressure, workers could remove layers without fracturing the stone. It is subtle, efficient, and almost invisible in practice, but remarkably effective over time. If true, it suggests an empirical science developed through observation and trial, not just brute force. These hidden mechanics are not speculative. Archaeologists have documented the spirals and the tight corners. Engineers have tried to replicate them. The results show that there is a deliberate system behind the cuts. One small variation, one miscalculation, and the granite would crack. Ancient workers were not just laborers, they were careful experimenters, understanding cause and effect in materials that challenge even modern technology. And here is the tension. Much of this knowledge seems deliberately obscured in the historical record. Egyptologists note taxes, ceremonies, and tombs in writing. Yet engineering techniques appear absent. It raises the question, was this specialized knowledge deliberately guarded, passed only to initiates? Or did it fade over time, surviving only in stone? If you find this story compelling, make sure to subscribe, because what comes next will uncover global connections and power structures that intersect with these hidden sciences. Moving massive granite blocks was not just about cutting them, it was about transportation. Some stones weighed over 70 tons. They had to travel hundreds of miles from Aswan to Giza. Rivers were used, yes, but the precision and coordination required suggest a logistical system far more sophisticated than previously imagined. Experimental reconstructions show that simple sleds over wet sand could reduce friction dramatically. Ancient Egyptians likely understood the physics of lubrication and force distribution. Water, sledges, ropes, and hundreds of workers could move enormous stones efficiently. But the organization behind it was remarkable. Coordinating thousands of laborers, maintaining supplies, and managing precise placement requires advanced planning and record-keeping. Consider the granite boxes at Saqqara. They were carved, polished, transported, and placed underground with extreme accuracy. The lids fit perfectly. The sides are perfectly flat. To achieve this, multiple teams likely worked in parallel, following exact measurements. Even a small error would make placement impossible. The hidden system here is not visible in the stones themselves. It is in the process, the timing, the sequencing, the understanding of forces, friction, and balance. Modern engineers marvel at it. Some argue it is equivalent to a contemporary project management operation, just without the paperwork. There is another tension in this story: global implications. If ancient civilizations mastered material manipulation and logistics at such a level, they may have influenced trade networks, political power, and technology far beyond what we recognize. Knowledge was power, and controlling these techniques could consolidate authority. The question grows, if these methods existed thousands of years ago, why did they disappear? Was it lost through time, political suppression, or a choice to guard secrets? The answers may be buried beneath stone, and within the structures that still stand today. If we step back, the granite mystery is not just about ancient Egypt. It is about how knowledge shapes civilizations, and how the loss of knowledge can rewrite history. The techniques required to cut, move, and place massive granite blocks suggest a mastery of material science, physics, and logistics that rivals modern understanding. Other civilizations show similar patterns. In South America, the Inca moved stones weighing dozens of tons up steep mountainsides. In Europe, megalithic structures like Stonehenge reflect precise alignment and balance. Everywhere, humans mastered materials in ways that seem almost forgotten. The question becomes, how widespread was this knowledge? And why did it fade in so many places? Control of such techniques could be a source of global influence. Ancient rulers who understood construction, material limits, and organization could shape monuments that lasted millennia, impressing subjects and rivals alike. Engineering was political. Science was power. The more advanced your methods, the more you could project authority. These hidden systems also suggest that our modern understanding of technological progression is incomplete. Linear timelines of simple to complex may overlook isolated pockets of advanced insight. Some techniques may have existed, vanished, and re-emerged in later periods. In that sense, lost science is not just history, it's a cautionary tale about human memory and preservation. And yet, much of this knowledge is still locked in stone. The evidence is physical, empirical, and undeniable. Granite does not lie. The cuts, spirals, and placements are proof of applied understanding. But the methods, the thought processes, and the organizational genius remain elusive. As we consider these global implications, the tension grows. Knowledge shapes power. Control over knowledge shapes civilizations. And the loss of knowledge can make even the most impressive achievements seem impossible or mystical to future generations. As we reach the final layer of this investigation, one thing becomes clear. The stones themselves are teachers. Granite blocks, drill cores, and polished boxes are not just relics. They are records of method, precision, and deep understanding. They hint at systems that combined observation, experimentation, and careful planning over decades, even centuries. The story of granite cuts forces us to reflect on how knowledge is preserved or lost. Ancient Egyptians recorded rituals, taxes, and monuments meticulously. But engineering methods were mostly absent from written records. Perhaps these techniques were considered sacred or proprietary, passed only to select craftsmen. Or perhaps time simply erased them. Either way, the physical evidence remains. This evidence challenges assumptions about human capability. It is not about magic or aliens. It is about intelligence applied rigorously under natural constraints. It is about humans pushing the limits of what their hands, minds, and simple materials could achieve. That is extraordinary in itself. The implications go beyond history. Today, we face complex engineering challenges, resource limitations, and environmental constraints. The ancient mastery over stone and logistics reminds us that innovation can arise from careful observation, iterative experimentation, and collaboration. Knowledge is power, but only if it is preserved and shared. So we are left with a final question. If ancient civilizations could achieve such precision and understanding with limited tools, what might we rediscover if we study the methods deeply, without bias, without assumption? What forgotten insights lie hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to understand? If this journey has opened your eyes, subscribe to explore more stories where history, science, and hidden knowledge intersect. There are more mysteries in stone, waiting for careful observation and questioning. As we reach the final layer of this investigation, one thing becomes clear. The stones themselves are teachers. Granite blocks, drill cores, and polished boxes are not just relics. They are records of method, precision, and deep understanding. They hint at systems that combined observation, experimentation, and careful planning over decades, even centuries. The story of granite cuts forces us to reflect on how knowledge is preserved or lost. Ancient Egyptians recorded rituals, taxes, and monuments meticulously, but engineering methods were mostly absent from written records. Perhaps these techniques were considered sacred or proprietary, passed only to select craftsmen, or perhaps time simply erased them. Either way, the physical evidence remains. This evidence challenges assumptions about human capability. It is not about magic or aliens. It is about intelligence applied rigorously under natural constraints. It is about humans pushing the limits of what their hands, minds, and simple materials could achieve. That is extraordinary in itself. The implications go beyond history. Today, we face complex engineering challenges, resource limitations, and environmental constraints. The ancient mastery over stone and logistics reminds us that innovation can arise from careful observation, iterative experimentation, and collaboration. Knowledge is power, but only if it is preserved and shared. So we are left with a final question. If ancient civilizations could achieve such precision and understanding with limited tools, what might we rediscover if we study the methods deeply, without bias, without assumption? What forgotten insights lie hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to understand? If this journey has opened your eyes, subscribe to explore more stories where history, science, and hidden knowledge intersect. There are more mysteries in stone, waiting for careful observation and questioning.